You know someone like this, a man full of vision, big plans, brilliant concepts. There is something luminous in him, as if he were destined for something rare. He speaks about future empires, revolutionary ideas, the life he will build one day. He exists in potential, but nothing ever solidifies. Nothing is completed. Every unfinished chapter comes with an explanation. The timing was wrong. The people were wrong. The system wasn't ready. The world simply hasn't recognized his genius yet. Maybe he is your old friend from school. Maybe your brother. Maybe your partner. Maybe your father. Someone who, despite the passing years, feels suspended in adolescence. An adult in age, but not in structure. Restless, emotionally volatile, allergic to responsibility, fascinated by freedom, but frightened of commitment, always searching for the next horizon, and running the moment reality demands something solid. And maybe, quietly, you still believe he will eventually transform. Carl Jung described this psychological pattern as the Puer Aeternus, the eternal boy, an archetype of a man who remains in perpetual becoming. He is always on the verge of life, always preparing, always about to begin, yet never fully entering it. He captivates. His energy is alive. His imagination is fertile. His spontaneity feels magnetic. But behind that lightness, there is a shadow, an incapacity to endure structure, a resistance to limits, a refusal to confront the ordinary demands that shape maturity. The eternal boy unconsciously expects existence to bend toward his desires. He waits for the perfect opportunity, the flawless partner, the ideal career, a reality that aligns seamlessly with his internal fantasy. And when the world proves imperfect, he withdraws. He detaches. He abandons the attempt. He retreats back into possibility, where nothing can fail because nothing is tested. He convinces himself he is too exceptional for routine, too inspired for discipline, too unique for the compromises of adulthood. Yet beneath that narrative lies something far more fragile: fear. Fear of inadequacy, fear of disappointment, fear of discovering that he is not as extraordinary as he imagines. Growing up would mean risking that revelation. If you have ever tried to stand beside someone like this, you know the fatigue it brings. You offer guidance that dissolves. You provide encouragement that evaporates. You push gently, then firmly, only to realize he does not truly wish to move. Not yet, perhaps not ever, and sometimes, painfully, he shifts the blame. He makes you question yourself, as though your expectations are unfair, as though asking for growth is cruelty, as though wanting something stable means you are suffocating him. But here is the uncomfortable truth. This man is not free. He is confined within an illusion of limitless freedom that is, in reality, a cage built from avoidance. A life spent circling potential becomes a life unlived. If nothing interrupts the pattern, he will age chronologically while remaining psychologically suspended. Older, but not deeper. This is not condemnation. It is reflection. And if you are still listening, something in you recognizes the archetype. Maybe you see it in someone close. Maybe you feel its echo within yourself. The path of the Puer Aeternus does not have to end in stagnation. Transformation is possible, but only when fantasy gives way to confrontation. Only when the boy chooses to meet reality instead of escaping it. So let's look at that turning point, honestly, directly, without illusion, because that is where change begins. The Puer Aeternus is not merely a personality description. It is an archetypal current, a deep psychological pattern that moves beneath awareness in countless men. And because it often appears wrapped in charm, creativity, and a so-called free spirit, it is easily romanticized. But beneath that brightness lies something far more serious, an instinctive resistance to maturation. Jung recognized this motif not only in clinical practice, but in myths, legends, and religious imagery across cultures. The eternal boy appears as the one who refuses to leave psychic infancy, who clings unconsciously to the protected inner world where responsibility is carried by someone else. Symbolically, it is the refusal to separate from the maternal field, from that invisible space where life is organized for you, where consequences are softened, where demands are minimal. He lives suspended in anticipation. Tomorrow will be glorious. Soon everything will align. One day he will step into his destiny. He imagines himself chosen, exceptional, marked for something extraordinary. Yet in daily life, he avoids authorship of his own existence. You have likely witnessed this pattern intimately. The man who drifts from career to career, always searching for something that truly fits. The one who begins, ventures with intensity, only to withdraw when resistance appears. The lover who burns with passion, then vanishes when intimacy requires stability. The spiritual seeker who speaks of enlightenment and freedom, yet cannot sustain ordinary obligations. This is not about lack of intellect. Often the pure is gifted, perceptive, creative, imaginative. He maintains a vivid connection to inspiration that others may have long lost. But precisely because of that, he prefers the world of possibility to the world of structure. He longs for elevation without construction, connection without responsibility, recognition without discipline, fulfillment without sacrifice. He wants the fruit, but not the cultivation. And when reality fails to conform to his internal script, he revolts. The fault lies in society, in the economy, in his upbringing, in circumstance, in fate. Rarely, if ever, in himself. Jung described this condition as a disturbance in the relationship with time. The eternal boy does not inhabit the present. He inhabits the not yet. He is always waiting for the proper moment, the perfect partnership, the definitive opportunity, the right phase of life. He lives in anticipation, never in embodiment. And because of that, life remains theoretical. Dreams accumulate, and over time, those dreams, once luminous, become heavy. They shift from inspiration to burden. Yet this archetype is not purely destructive. The Puer carries something vital. He embodies inner youth, imagination, the capacity to renew perspective, the refusal to let the spirit become rigid. Without this element, life would calcify into sterile routine. The problem is not the presence of the inner boy. The problem begins when he governs the entire psyche, when fantasy overrides responsibility, when potential replaces action, when avoidance disguises itself as freedom. And this is the turning point we must now examine. The moment when charm begins to decay, when lightness becomes instability, when the shadow of the eternal boy starts to dominate. Because the man-child does not only sabotage himself, he erodes relationships, he destabilizes environments, he quietly drains the emotional life of those around him. If what you are hearing resonates, take a moment to support the channel and subscribe. It helps this conversation reach those who need it. Now, let's continue. There is undeniably something captivating about a man ruled by the Puer Aeternus. He seems untethered, unconventional. He speaks with poetic spontaneity, dreams expansively, lives as though rules apply to others, not to him. He appears untouched by gravity, but gravity always returns. He rejects labels. He avoids attachment. He moves lightly, as if nothing can bind him. And for many, that is intoxicating. In a world heavy with obligations, contracts, expectations, and routine, the image of someone untethered feels like a breath of fresh air. He appears liberated, untouched by the machinery of ordinary life. But this is where the illusion takes form. What looks like freedom is often avoidance. The pure is not truly free. He is evading. He evades disappointment. He evades failure. He evades rejection. He evades the irreversible passage of time. Most of all, he evades the burden of authorship, the responsibility of shaping his own existence with deliberate choices. Every decision postponed, every commitment deferred, every obligation transferred to someone else. Each avoidance reinforces the invisible cage he calls autonomy. You have seen how it plays out. He claims he refuses a conventional career because he is destined for something higher. But beneath that declaration is often anxiety, fear of structure, of hierarchy, of sustained effort within limits he does not control. He says he resists long-term relationships because they are restrictive. But what he truly fears is exposure, being known deeply, being accountable, being required to remain when discomfort arises. He speaks against rules, yet struggles profoundly with boundaries. The freedom he advertises is not sovereignty. It is immaturity disguised as philosophy. He wants to remain untouched, perpetually youthful, unburdened, unstained by compromise. To maintain that image, he must keep moving, like a balloon carried by the wind, beautiful in the sky, but rootless. And yet time does not negotiate. Reality eventually requires payment. Jung described the Puer Aeternus as existing in suspension, hovering between heaven and earth. He does not wish to descend into the density of real life. He resists grounding. He resists embodiment. But without grounding, there is no growth. Without discipline, no mastery. Without friction, no transformation. Authentic freedom is not the absence of limits. It is the conscious decision to bind oneself to something meaningful. The eternal boy does not bind himself. He slips away, and in slipping away, he does not only sabotage his own trajectory, he slowly erodes the emotional stability of those who attempt to love him. This is where the archetype darkens. At first, the enchantment is undeniable. The pure radiates vitality. He is expressive, passionate, full of ideas. He seems alive in a way that feels contagious. But over time, something shifts. Lightness becomes inconsistency. Sensitivity becomes volatility. Freedom reveals itself as withdrawal. The shadow begins to surface, and the shadow is subtle. It rarely arrives dramatically. Instead, it seeps into daily life through small fractures, missed commitments, forgotten obligations, financial chaos, sudden reversals of decision, promises made with conviction and broken without repair. Each act is wrapped in gentle language. I'm not ready. I don't want to force myself. I just need more time. But beneath those phrases lies something more uncomfortable. Fear. Fear of maturation. Fear of imperfection. Fear of judgment. Fear of discovering that he is not exceptional, but human. And so he hesitates. He postpones. He withdraws. Not because he lacks capacity, but because to step forward would mean accepting limitation. And limitation feels to him like annihilation. This is the beginning of the true shadow of the man-child. And it is far more destructive than it first appears. And so, without fully realizing it, he undermines whatever demands growth. Any path that requires steadiness, any relationship that requires accountability, any dream that requires discipline. The sabotage is rarely dramatic. It is subtle, gradual, almost invisible, until the consequences accumulate. Romantic partners feel it first. They experience the contradiction of loving someone who seems extraordinary in essence but unreliable in action. He speaks of devotion, yet withdraws when consistency is required. He describes a shared future, yet never lays the foundation for one. His words are expansive. His behavior is evasive. Family members watch with increasing frustration. They see intelligence unanchored, talent unused, doors opened and left unopened. Opportunity circles him, but he does not step forward. Friends, too, begin to tire. They encourage, they advise, they wait. And over time, they realize they are standing beside someone who permanently lives in the realm of almost. Almost successful, almost committed, almost transformed. Behind this pattern lies a suffocating stillness, an invisible stagnation disguised as motion. He seems forever suspended in emotional adolescence, aging biologically while remaining psychologically unfinished. Like every archetype, the shadow of the Puer thrives in unconsciousness. He rarely perceives the destruction clearly. In fact, he often believes he is the misunderstood one, the victim of rigidity, the casualty of a dull world. He accuses society of being lifeless. He calls maturity conformity. He views grounded individuals as people who have betrayed their spirit. And so, he withdraws further, convincing himself that isolation is authenticity. But what he calls authenticity is often avoidance. Jung reminded us, enlightenment does not arise from imagining figures of light. It arises from making the darkness conscious. The issue is not that a man carries an inner child. That is natural, even necessary. The problem begins when that child dominates the psyche, when immaturity becomes sovereign, when the fear of limitation governs existence. And this sabotage rarely develops in isolation. Behind the eternal boy, there is often another force, quieter, less visible, but deeply influential. The archetype of the mother. No Puer Aeternus appears from emptiness. Frequently, behind the man who refuses to step into adulthood, there exists a protective presence, sometimes tender, sometimes suffocating, a figure who shields him from consequences, and in doing so, shields him from growth. In Jungian psychology, this is the archetypal mother. When balanced, this archetype nurtures life. It provides warmth, stability, protection. But when excessive, it transforms into what Jung described as the devouring mother, not one who gives life freely, but one who unconsciously imprisons. This figure can be literal, an overprotective mother who intervened in every struggle, who softened every fall, who resolved every conflict, who loved deeply but prevented autonomy. By removing friction, she removed the necessity for strength, or the figure may be symbolic. A partner who assumes the role of caretaker, a grandmother, a woman who nourishes, protects, consoles, and unconsciously binds. In such dynamics, the Puer does not seek partnership. He seeks replacement. Not a companion who challenges him, but a maternal presence who understands without demanding, supports without confronting, forgives without boundaries. This arrangement feels safe, comfortable, symbiotic, emotionally warm, but it is quietly destructive. As long as he is cared for, he does not need to choose. As long as someone absorbs the consequences, he does not need to mature. As long as protection surrounds him, he does not need to confront the world. He remains psychologically suspended, waiting for the women in his life to carry the weight of what he refuses to shoulder. And the maternal figure is often unaware of her role in the cycle. She believes she is helping, loving, protecting. Yet, unconsciously, she may be reinforcing dependence, feeding a bond that drains vitality from both sides. Jung was unequivocal on this point. Without separation from the maternal complex, a man cannot individuate. He cannot root himself in his own authority. He cannot step fully into adulthood. To grow, the bond must be transformed. Not rejected with hostility, not destroyed with bitterness, but consciously differentiated. And this is where the real confrontation begins. The deepest tragedy emerges when the mother, literal or symbolic, does not allow the psychological birth of the son. The body grows older, the years accumulate, but inwardly, something remains suspended. Instead of grounding himself in responsibility, he waits for comfort. Instead of building structure, he searches for reassurance. Chronologically adult, psychically unfinished. This pattern becomes even more destructive in romantic relationships. He falls intensely, quickly, almost magically. He projects onto the woman an image far larger than reality. She becomes the answer to unnamed emptiness, the healer of wounds he has never examined, the source of meaning he has never constructed within himself. But projection is not partnership, and the moment depth is required. When intimacy asks for accountability, when love demands endurance, when responsibility replaces fantasy, he recoils, he withdraws, he destabilizes, he sabotages, or worse, he blames. Because unconsciously, he was never searching for a companion. He was searching for the maternal field once again, a lover who would nurture without challenging, hold without demanding, accept without confronting. To break this dynamic is painful. It requires separation. It requires rupture. It requires cutting the invisible psychic cord that binds him to dependency. Yet it is precisely this rupture that initiates individuation. Growing hurts, but refusing to grow corrodes the soul far more deeply. And so we arrive at the question of transformation. How does the eternal boy step into manhood? How does he stop fleeing and begin constructing an internal foundation strong enough to carry his life? If what you are hearing resonates, deeper exploration of Jung's ideas can be found in my ebook, Beyond the Shadow. It unpacks these dynamics and offers tools for self-understanding. The link is in the pinned comment. There comes a moment, inevitable for many, when illusion begins to fracture. Unrealized dreams grow heavy. Repeated failures leave marks. Possibility narrows as time advances. The man who once believed he had infinite tomorrows suddenly confronts a mirror. How long, he asks silently, can I live as if there is endless time? This is the crisis, the turning point where the pain of immaturity surpasses the fear of maturation. But maturation is not gentle. Jung described individuation as a psychic birth, and birth is not aesthetic. It is rupture, blood, contraction, a symbolic death of what once felt safe. The first step is the collapse of fantasy, to accept that life will not pause for readiness, that there is no flawless timing, no rescuer arriving at the final hour. That reality is not an enemy. It is the only arena in which something authentic can unfold. To grow up is not to betray your essence. It is to give it form. Yet before construction comes mourning. The mourning of the idealized self, the mourning of imagined destinies, the mourning of promises never embodied, and perhaps most painfully, the mourning of the maternal bond that once provided safety. Letting the boy die does not mean suffocating imagination or extinguishing vitality. It means refusing to let immaturity rule. The inner boy may remain, but no longer as sovereign. He becomes guided, integrated, placed within a psyche led by conscious responsibility. Maturity is not glamorous. It is repetitive. It is structured. It is consistent. It means staying when escape feels easier, committing when freedom tempts withdrawal, working without inspiration, remaining present in love after the intoxication of idealization fades. It means exchanging the thrill of novelty for the quiet power of continuity. And here lies the hidden paradox. When the pure is integrated rather than denied, he does not vanish. He transforms. His creativity remains. His intuition sharpens. His vision expands. But now it is anchored, directed, enacted through a psyche capable of bearing responsibility. This is rebirth, when the eternal boy ceases running from reality and begins building within it. But this transformation does not occur passively. It demands decision, discipline, conscious confrontation with fear, and few choose it willingly, which is why the final step, the true integration, requires something even deeper than effort. At this stage of the journey, many men feel disoriented. They recognize the pattern. They sense the urgency. They know the era of psychological childhood is closing, but they stand at the threshold, unsure of how to proceed. They understand change is necessary, yet the first step feels unclear. How does one take ownership after years of drifting? How does one assume command of a life that has long been postponed? That is why this conversation continues, because the next movement is not about theory, it is about decision. It is about those who feel the tension of transition, who no longer want to escape, but do not yet know how to build. If you have stayed this long, something within you is already responding. Perhaps you recognize this archetype in someone close to you. Perhaps you recognize it within yourself. There is no shame in that. Every human being carries, to some extent, the temptation to remain protected, to remain untested in a world that demands structure. We have all delayed something, avoided something, fantasized about shortcuts, hoped life would grant comfort before asking for courage. But life does not negotiate indefinitely. It asks, it requires, it confronts. Sooner or later, you will face the dividing line, remain in the realm of potential, or step into the realm of embodiment. And that crossing happens only through choice, not when you feel inspired, not when circumstances are perfect, not when fear disappears, but when you decide that avoidance has cost enough. Jung warned that what we refuse to confront internally will meet us repeatedly in external form. The Puer Aeternus is one such inner force. It disguises itself as originality, as misunderstood brilliance, as resistance to conformity. Yet unchecked, it erodes foundation. It prevents roots from taking hold. It keeps life suspended. This pattern will not dissolve on its own. It must be acknowledged, named, integrated, and then surpassed. Maturity begins the moment you stop waiting for rescue and accept authorship, when responsibility ceases to feel like confinement and begins to feel like agency, when you realize that real freedom is not indulgence, it is disciplined choice. Freedom is not doing whatever impulse dictates. Freedom is possessing enough inner structure to choose what is necessary, even when it is uncomfortable. So now, reflect. What part of this journey resonated most deeply with you? Sometimes articulation is the first act of transformation. Writing a thought, naming a fear, admitting recognition. If this reflection has moved something inside you, share it with someone who may be circling the same pattern, perhaps unaware of it. And understand this, the exploration does not end here. The next conversation will illuminate another crucial dimension of this psychological puzzle. Stay with it. Growth can sting. Confrontation can unsettle. But on the other side of discomfort lies something far more substantial than fantasy. Not imagined freedom, real freedom, the kind that is built, not borrowed.